gunshots, motorcycle accidents, balcony falls, high-speed winds throwing equipment around. Right? Those are just some of the hazards that have led to severe injuries and even deaths on film sets in recent years. In fact, Amazon Studios alone has had 3 incidents in less than 5 years that have left people dead or seriously hurt, like John Farhat. Before working on the set of Amazon's holiday movie Candy Cane Lane starring Eddie Murphy, John was a 33-year vet of Hollywood. He'd overseen the computer-generated graphics on more than 20 films over his 3 decades. He had become an in-demand visual effects supervisor. Hell, he was even nominated for an Academy Award for his work on The Mask. But in March of last year, John got seriously injured in an accident on set, and he's been mostly bedridden ever since, which is why in September, we saw him sue for negligence. And according to John's lawsuit, the production for Candy Cane Lane was a disaster, saying the director was frequently requesting rewrites, completely changing the movie, and the production schedule was disorganized to say the least. Like, for example, the producers were demanding a flaming 15-foot Christmas tree, but the weather kept pushing that shot further and further back. That is until March 29th, when they just decided to press forward despite gusts of wind of around 30 miles per hour. And in his lawsuit, John said that the tent that was meant to protect the equipment, it wasn't secured properly to the ground, leading to a strong gust sending it flying. And that tent, he said, it speared him in the back and it threw him into the air before he fell to the ground unconscious. In fact, John actually made a video simulation showing exactly how he was injured. And this accident broke 5 of John's vertebrae, 2 ribs, and even now, more than a year later, he is unable to sit and can't even stand for more than an hour, and he has to take an ambulance to and from his doctor's appointments. With John's wife saying she struggles watching her husband, a staple in the Hollywood crew world and also a helicopter pilot, just waste away in front of a television now, saying it's like putting a hummingbird inside a box. And while he's obviously struggling physically, he's also battling bureaucracy, right? Endless red tape for workers' compensation. And when he filed his lawsuit, Amazon's lawyers denied they were negligent or even liable for the accident. And all we really saw was OSHA impose a fine of $7,200 for violations in connection with the Candy Cane Lane project, including the delayed reporting of a serious injury. However, the fines were levied against Big Indie Candy Inc., a production services company hired by Amazon to oversee the film. In fact, Amazon reportedly often employs a production service to manage day-to-day operations on film sets. And then you see that production service in turn outsources even further for things like insurance, payroll, and equipment, with the key thing being separating Amazon from direct legal liability if things go sideways. And according to the New York Times, John decided to share his story now over a year later amid his lawsuit in light of other incidents that are happening on Amazon sets. Like in April, on the set of the movie The Pickup, which interestingly also stars Eddie Murphy, a stunt went wrong in Atlanta, resulting in a car crash that sent 8 people to the hospital, with one of those 8 being Marvin Haven, who spent several days in the ICU for injuries including broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a skull fracture that required facial reconstructive surgery. But then really, the first incident to kick off Amazon's string of film set mishaps, it happened back in 2020, because that's when a stunt woman on the set of Rings of Power hit her head on a fitting on the bottom of a tank that she was working in. And a review of the accident by the New Zealand government's health and safety regulator determined, quote, risk assessment, worker engagement, hazard identification, monitor, and review structures were not as cohesive as they could have been. You know, it's worth noting that while film sets can be dangerous for anybody in any department, stunt workers are often assuming the most risk, with many of their injuries also going unreported, usually out of fear of being blacklisted. With, for example, Jeffrey Russell of Ohio University saying, many stunt performers are afraid to report their injuries, especially head trauma, and fear they'll be put on a do not hire list or looked at as a liability. The more injuries or trauma, the harder it may be to find work. But that should not be how it is. Production companies and their unions should be ensuring stunt performers are taken care of and not reprimanded for any injuries sustained on the job. And according to a study co-authored by Russell and published in the Journal of Occupational Medicine and Toxicology last year, around 80% of stunt performers have experienced at least one incident of head impact or head whip on the job, which is of course more than similar injuries reported by dancers, theater workers, and even professional fighters, with 65% of those who were injured reporting concussion-like symptoms and kept working despite that, and 44% deciding not to report it out of shame or fear of losing work or feeling like they needed to just tough it out, with also several respondents in the study survey suggesting improvements to safety of the work environment, right, including things like stricter standards for stunt coordinators and ensuring proper gear is used. They also suggested that some coordinators have a tendency to choose less experienced stunt performers over proven ones, and said that involving a producer in the vetting process that may address that. But nonetheless, they say that the risk of injury, especially head injuries to stunt performers, it needs to be addressed within the industry, with notably the 2023 study's co-author Elizabeth Beverly saying, we have observed the negative outcomes of head trauma in football and other sports, and changes have been made in the last 5 years to prevent and reduce the number of those concussions. My hope is that the film industry draws parallels and sees this as an opportunity to intervene and make changes. Stunt performers are an integral part of the entertainment industry, and they deserve to work in a safe environment. Now, with all this, I do want to note, injuries on set, they are not an Amazon exclusive. Right? Following the infamous shooting accident by Alec Baldwin on the set of Rust, the LA Times reviewed published reports and government data to find that at least 19 fatal injuries occurred on movie sets between 2010 and 2019. And according to data from OSHA, there have been at least 47 fatalities and 250 film production accidents since 1990. Though it could also be worth noting that compared to some other industries, less than 50 deaths in over 30 years, it's not too bad. But as a attorney Chris Deacon told the LA Times, any death in what should be a safe working environment with platinum-rated safety standards is a death too many. And adding, if those engaged to work on set in whatever capacity are dying at the hands of the creative process, then something is fundamentally wrong in the production processes. And all this is over the last decade, we've actually seen the number of fatalities steadily rising, right? And that likely due in part to the rapid growth of the industry to feed the content beast of innumerable streaming services. However, also you have authorities and experts saying the producers cutting corners to save on time and money, it's also contributing to the problem. With, for example, Jeff Harris, an attorney who represented the family of stuntman John Bernecker in a wrongful death lawsuit, saying, "It does not surprise me if you have reduced budgets, a more stressed crew, more expectation on the bottom line, that you're going to have increases in both injuries on set and fatalities."